Good afternoon. There are 700 days until the 2024 presidential elections, but let's focus on what's happening today. Very cloudy, gloomy day. Hi, Brian. I was just talking about the weather because it's kind of a. We don't need sunglasses in New York. It is so gloomy and cloudy, and yeah,
Same in DC.
not a lot going on. So I thought we would just try something different and talk about our hobbies or something because it's just such a laid back kind of a no news day. Although before we get to what actually is happening in the country, I was just informed because I did not have a chance to check it out myself that during the medal ceremony for the and I rarely use this word. So when I do use it, it has meaning. The heroes who saved untold lives on January 6th, 2021, were given medals of honor in the Capitol building. I believe unfortunately I did not have a chance to watch it live, but I will certainly watch the video later. They were handed the medals, I believe, by Speaker Nancy Pelosi. And then there was a line, Senate Leader Schumer, and then Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, House Leader Kevin McCarthy, et cetera, and to a man, or a person. I don't know quite who all got medals. They shook Nancy Pelosi's hand. They shook Chuck Schumer's hand, and like the heroes they are, ignored and walked past Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy, which is exactly what those two traitors to America deserve. Did you have a chance to see it, Brian?
Yeah, I know a couple of those guys pretty well too, and they're straight up they're straight up heroes. And not
Yeah.
only are they straight up heroes, they're straight up good people
Yep.
who they were just doing their job on January 6th. They didn't expect to be made heroes for it, but they certainly didn't expect to be vilified by the GOP for what they did. So that their reaction, I think, was caustic but well warranted.
And part of it is because yes, what they did that day was heroic, but what they did afterward is really what cemented their heroism. Standing up to the just egregious and again anti-American attacks.
Yeah.
On the steps they took that day to protect as many of our elected officials and their support staff and any support staff in the Capitol building as possible. They weren't thinking about politics. They were only thinking, how do we save the Capitol building and the people in it without causing mass death? I mean, that's literally what they had. They put their bodies on the line in a way I would say at least 99% of elected Republicans never have.
Oh no, you saw Josh Hawley running away doing his impersonation of Chariots of Fire, and so that's
but without the good music.
Yeah, but I will say that of all the guys I know that did that, I would give a shout out to Harry Dunn, who is not only a hell of a police officer, but I played trivia with him on it in Trivia Nights. He's pretty damn good.
Yeah, they all bring something different to the table in terms of how they've gone about getting through it, and I've nothing but admiration. One, for what they did, again, two, for how they've handled it in the interim, and three, for dissing Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy, who were despicable anti-American people who I've been thinking about this a lot, actually, partially because of what happened at the Supreme Court yesterday. Unfortunately, Dahlia's not here today. I have to be completely honest. Dahlia is our Supreme Court watcher, and I would feel it would feel sadistic to ask her to recap what happened. But, the bottom line is the Supreme Court is now run by a bunch of racist misogynists who want to turn the clock back to 1850. And I'm not kidding. This is,
Conservative
they
Catholic.
are telling us who they are by what they do and how and the questions they ask and the quote unquote jokes they make. So I just been thinking about, I think it was Alito and Dobbs and, maybe seconded by Coney Barrett, who said, "Hey, you guys still have the right to vote." Well, not entirely, but I was thinking we can't vote out the Supreme Court though.
Get a piece.
I know this is kind of off topic, but I'm thinking about that partially because we have the obviously the Georgia runoff today, which is the biggest news, and the results will be even bigger news, of course. And the importance of having 51 Democrats versus a 50-50 split, even with obviously having Vice President Harris to break ties, it really does matter, right, Jen? But we're constantly just on a knife's edge here, and besides the fact that it's really stressful and is leading some of us towards burnout, it isn't enough. We need to get rid of McConnell and McCarthy and and right the wrongs of the Supreme Court, and it kind of feels like the only way to do that is get one, to elect Democrats who are willing to fight with bare knuckles or brass knuckles, which would be even better. Two, to get people to challenge incumbent Republicans who could actually win. So sort of in the context of that, what are you looking for in Georgia, and what are some of the more important things you think there are about the composition of the Senate? 51-49, 50-50 doesn't sound like a big difference, but it really is.
So I think there's a a lot of questions in there, and I'll take them piece by piece.
And Brian doesn't want to hear your answer.
Apparently. Oh, he's listening. Hi, Brian. Did I do something wrong, Brian?
I hit the wrong button. Forgive me. I was trying to mute my microphone so I could take a sip without disturbing you.
It's usually my cat or my bird doing that.
I got a big 138-pound dog who'll do the same.
Oh my God.
That sounds more dangerous. Anyway, Jen,
yeah. So this is the deal. There is a huge difference in having 50-50 versus having 51-49. And the main difference is committee control. So that, and then the second is voting. And the reason why this matters is, technically speaking, when we're 50-50, there is no majority party, but the way the Senate rules have worked out, it seems, is that, the Democrats still get to have the chairs, get to chair the committees, and the chairs set the agenda. But I think there are more compromises that were made. There's more control that Mitch McConnell had. And if we actually get this seat in Georgia, if we keep the Georgia seat and Warnock wins, that means we as Democrats would have a real majority and be able to better staff and better control the agenda of those committees. So that's huge. The other thing is, one more vote means hopefully less power that either Sinema or Manchin have.
That's true, baby.
But it also gives them also maybe a little more leverage. Let me just say it differently. Sometimes it seems like Manchin and Sinema together are, Samanchen or whatever, like they're just one thing. But sometimes they're different. They're sort of differ on things. And so that will take the power away from them. And that's good. That means getting more progress. So that is super important to me. I can address some of the other stuff, but I feel like I've been talking a bit. So I don't know if you want me to talk about some of the other things you just raised, or.
Well, let me just go off on a slightly different tangent. Okay. Because yes, all of that is very important. And another thing you didn't mention, but probably would have gotten to, is just how it positions Democrats for 2024, where we have a much tougher map than we did in 2022. but hopefully won't have many of the things going against us that we had this time. And I just want to keep reminding people that the Democratic results in November were extraordinary. It was it was almost unprecedented. I think the last time that happened, it was after September 11th, where George Bush kind of had an advantage there with his unearned 90% approval rating. But one of the things, and this is another reason, this is another ad for having more Democrats and giving us more momentum going forward, is that the fact that it's even close is such a stain on the Republican Party, on white voters in Georgia, who last I checked were polling 60% for Walker, who is, I think, objectively the worst Senate candidate in modern history. And we're talking about people like, against people like Sharon Engel and Mehmet Oz and J.D. Vance, who shockingly, maybe
I
not
don't
so
think you
shockingly,
go far enough. I think he may be the worst in the history of the United
he might be. I just don't like saying that because I don't really know. I mean, I don't have the receipts for that. But it just points to another what has become a systemic problem of the extent to which we are so conditioned to vote for party no matter what. It's, party over country on the right these days. And if they can put up candidates like J.D. Vance and Herschel Walker and win, that signals to me that we have an even more difficult and complicated fight ahead of us. Because if you think about it, Herschel Walker's main qualification is that he played football in Georgia.
And that is all you need in Georgia. I keep saying that. People think there's something really nefarious or secretive or deep state or dark secret about his candidacy being able to be successful. But for many rural voters who live outside of the DC bubble, and for those who don't care about politics on a daily basis, they don't know what's going on with politics. All they know is Herschel Walker played football. I like Herschel Walker. If I vote for him, I ain't necessarily a racist because I voted for a black man.
But Brian, yeah, but that is nefarious. There is something very nefarious about that. And my point being that there are two different but related issues. One is the inability to get information to voters who are outside of the main channels where people get their news. And you look at some of the views of rural voters who are basically get their information from their pastors, many of whom are very political and basically engaging in unconstitutional behavior, the willingness of Republicans to be so cynical. And
there's your point.
But those two things intersect in very dangerous ways.
Sure. They
right,
take
Jen?
advantage of them. They take advantage of them. That's exactly right.
So Jen, like, what is a potential antidote? And again, I know we're in some ways talking about an election that is in the process of happening, and I just want to let everybody know that there will be an emergency Nerd Avenger session when the result is called. That hopefully it's tonight, but there's been a historic level of early voting. And I don't know when they start counting early votes in Georgia. So even though the polls close fairly early at 7:00, they may not start it. I don't know. But just to let everybody watching now, to inform everybody who's watching now, we will be coming back on hopefully to discuss the good news, but also the bad news if it comes to that. Anyway, sorry, Jen, go ahead.
Were you asking for an anecdote, or I'm not sure what the question was. There was a lot after the question.
I can't believe you could not, out of that just absolute mess. Just, I just first
But
of
by
all,
the way, if
just
this
to
were
complicate,
go ahead.
just to annoy everybody further, to go off on another tangent, but it's not an annoying one. Jen's new podcast, Booked Up, just debuted on Sunday, December 4th, and her first guest was our very own Dahlia Lithwick. And Jen did something that I just did, that I do all the time in my interviews. She basically asked a 7,000 part question that didn't end with a question. And Dahlia was like,
Let me just be clear. Most of it was easy to follow. And I had a conversation this morning with Michael, my husband, who said he realized that when I was asking that multi-part question, it wasn't that I wanted all 6 parts of it to be answered. It's sort of my way of not putting a friend on the spot. Like, I kind of throw out a bunch of stuff and think you just pick among that. And so what I should have done, or, if you don't want to answer any of those, just say something. So next time, and you've done this before, I'm sure, Mary and Brian, when you're on national news live and you've got like a 30-second hit and they ask you something and you want to be polite, but you're going to kind of dispense with whatever they said pretty quickly and pivot.
Right.
And I know how to do that, but we also have more time here and I'm not going to play those games with you. So
no, it wasn't a criticism. It was just it was this moment of recognition where I know I do that all the time. Like, I, first of all, will just make statements and expect the person to know that it's their turn. But I just interviewed Ashwagandha and I basically just talked for about 5 minutes and stopped. And she said, I don't know what you're asking me. And it's like, yes, because it is my goal to
so in other words, Mary, you would call yourself a multi-part question person.
I would indeed.
Well, let me answer your question. You're absolutely right, but let's pivot to the fact that they want to suspend the Constitution.
Yeah.
Okay, that was good. Yeah,
exactly. So basically, Jen, I mean, what I was asking is, what is a potential antidote to this conundrum of low information voters on the one hand and the willingness of one of our 2 major political parties to disgrace itself and America by putting forward the absolute worst candidates on the gamble, which is like a 50-50 gamble that they'll succeed simply because people are so tied into voting for their party.
Well, so the conundrum is this: politicians want to win their elections. But as we all know, they have a primary to face before they have a general. So they're kind of boxed in that if they understand, they saw the massacre that was in November midterms, and they understand the kinds of cray-cray election denying candidates cannot carry the day where they need to. And they would rather run either I don't want to call it a traditional conservative. It would also be a radical conservative. They want to run someone who is more palatable in the general, but they cannot get that so-called more palatable person in through a primary. So I think either they're going to have to try, they've tried the kind of bait and switch. It just doesn't work. And the problem with them, the reason why they cannot win primaries is because of your idiot uncle, who has still been very successful and is sort of in the wings, or actually trying to take center stage again, and will attack anyone who tries to stand in his spotlight. So they're really the only, so on the one hand, we could say, well, maybe this is good for Democrats winning in 2024. But on the other hand, it really sucks for democracy, because it's not for us just about winning elections. It's actually about having an educated electorate, about having us be able to actually vote, about true compromise on policies, about having our laws and policies reflect the progression of our society. So all of that stuff, if it's not just about winning, is jeopardized. What I would go. So one last thing is, so what is the antidote? The antidote is probably an indictment, because at some point that is going to make somebody step out of the race. I don't think you can be defending criminal cases on multiple fronts, and also running for office. But I wouldn't put anything past
Well,
them.
I mean, you could
We're
run from
talking about
jail if you
McDonald's
want
here.
to, right? But
Right.
Brian, you said in the chat, teaching media literacy. I agree. Teaching critical thinking, absolutely.
Well, I think it's got to
And
be part of the curriculum that going
yeah,
forward for kids. You got to be raised in an environment in which you're aware of what you're consuming, whether or not it's real or not. Media literacy is a real issue that has to be taught in schools, beginning from primary to secondary and post-secondary education. We have too many people in this country who simply don't know what it is, and that's, speaking to your point, Mary, is the intersection of cynicism and taking advantage of the rubes. You can take advantage of people when they're not aware of what it is that you're saying is full of shit. So that to me, that's the ultimate long term. But Jen, you're also right. In the short term, it's going to be an indictment. But I will just finish by saying that in Georgia, at least, Mary, to your point, in that race, I still think that Herschel Walker is a vampire. He's definitely not a werewolf. So he'll be, he'll survive only if there are people who are around that he can take advantage of, and I think those people are not enough to get him elected.
yeah, and obviously there are always two tracks we need to be operating on: the long term fixes, media literacy, critical thinking, actually teaching civics in a way that helps children from kindergarten on up. Like, don't just teach it junior and high school. Make it relevant to their day-to-day lives so they understand, and help them become the kind of critically thinking people who can um, make their own informed decisions. But short term, this happens every time Donald behaves exactly how he always behaves, right?
Right.
And just sometimes I guess some people think that he's crossing a line, which is, I think, absurd. But like, how many lines can you cross before you
Right.
just are
He
given any?
crossed lines a long time ago. Those lines are way in his.
It's 1968 is, seriously. So probably before that. So
50s.
this whole argument about where's the Republican Party? First of all, who fucking cares? Like, what are they going to say? Like, yes, there have been maybe two Republicans who have explicitly called Donald to task. One of them is Mitt Romney, who said he's not a MAGA, he's a rhino. It's like, are you kidding? What are you doing, Mitt Romney? You're being a coward, and you're pretending that Donald has nothing to do with the Republican Party. Sorry, guys, you don't get to do that. The rest of them have made very mealy-mouthed comments, not having anything to do with Donald, just the Constitution is very important. And, McCarthy, if and when he's a Speaker of the House, which is just something that fills me with such horror, has said they're going to read the Constitution. I'm pretty sure they're not going to read the 3/5 clause. And much more to our point today, I'm almost certain they're going to skip over Section 3 of Amendment 14, which says that people who engage in insurrections against the United States government are ineligible to run for office. But I don't know. Call me crazy. Jen, you have some anecdotal evidence. No, you have an anecdote to share with us about your.
I do. Bit by bit, I have noticed that my older white Republican relatives from Michigan have separated themselves from Donald Trump. Now, they would often whisper how much they disliked him, but now they're getting louder and allowing me to kind of not use their names but share what they're saying. And what struck me the other day is a family member sent me a piece that was in their local paper, which was just, I think it was just a republication of the AP article about Donald being rebuked supposedly for his wanting to terminate or suspend the Constitution, and a long, sort of tirade about how dangerous this person was. And this relative said to me, actually said, your friend Mary might need to change her last name, which I thought was
Why
really
now?
funny. Why now? Right. But
your last name.
and I didn't even know this relative knew I had you as a friend. So it was interesting, like something they would never mention before. But your friend Mary may need to change her name. and then just saying, and then the other thing though is this relative also told me on the phone that a cousin of mine, again, an older person, a second cousin of mine who is, as this relative said, to the right of Attila the Hun. This is somebody, I've had conversations with her and it's just painful, has been, ultra conservative, has just said, this is no longer my party. It's broken. Which if this happened to this one person, I'm telling you, and you may look at that like me, like roll your eyes, Mary, but these
No,
are the
I'm not rolling my eyes.
the hate that I hear for Donald is stronger than the hate I used to hear from them about Hillary.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
And I got to tell you about these Midwesterners. Once they start hating you, they don't stop hating you.
Yeah,
guys,
I mean, the grudges, the grudges they hold, and they're just silent grudges. They will not, this is a lifetime grudge for the rest of their lives. And this is why you saw what happened in Michigan happen.
Right. And I mean, look, that's good. That's very good. But it's not enough. I mean, that we can't keep, absolutely. I'm not complaining. Yes, it's a start. But we get tripped up if we allow the Republican to do what clearly Romney is trying to do. People like Romney and maybe Murkowski, although I'm not sure. Her statement was sort of brief and just to the point. He's trying to thread this needle. Donald's the problem. He's not really a Republican. Well, I beg to differ. They've enabled him at every turn. And that's why one of the many reasons I feel the way I feel about Liz Cheney. I mean, yes, I'm glad she finally found a line that could not be crossed. And you could say the same thing about Romney. But
they all voted with him.
They all voted for him, but two, and would they again? I don't think Cheney would, but I'm pretty sure Romney would.
And they supported his policies. They voted with him over 90% of the time.
Ryan, that's exactly the point.
Yeah.
You cannot make that separation if you're still supporting the policies. And it's the policies that have been not just the policies, but also the fact that the party supported the big lie. The party has consistently, yes, with one or two exceptions, just gone totally back and created this revisionist history of January 6th. So don't you think it's like at this point, it's just so flipping absurd to care at all what Republicans have to say about what Donald said?
Well, but to Jen's point, I think they're making strides to, it's like,
I meant elected Republicans, not
into the light.
Hang on.
Person for staying in the darkness for so
Hang on a second. No, I meant elected Republicans. Yes. I'm all for Republican voters like Jen's relatives getting there, and I applaud them. I'm talking specifically in this instance about elected Republicans.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is specifically that those elected Republicans have a limited shelf life because those who vote them in from the Republican Party are opening themselves up to the type of criticism of Donald Trump and the Republicans that others have embraced for the last 5 years. And to Jen's point, it says something to me that my very conservative, Trump-loving Church of the Jesus of the Waving Hands relatives who believe that, that those people are now coming out against Donald Trump. And the one comment when Donald Trump said, I want to dissolve or terminate the Constitution, my very conservative relative, who is a huge Trumper, who belongs to the Church of the Waving Hands, said basically, oh yeah, sure, he wants to dissolve the Constitution. I bet he doesn't want to dissolve the Fifth Amendment. And
I saw that was hysterical.
I know, it's like
that was hysterical.
I mean, that tells you where they're at. So those people that have been voted in office by these very same Republicans now will either have to pivot or, I believe, on down the line will face a very limited shelf life in office because there are people that, as Jen said, man, when you hack off someone from the Midwest, you've made a lifelong enemy and you don't have to do you can kiss their butt for the rest of your life and you're not going to make them happy. So I think
and let me just pick and this reverence for the Constitution is exactly right, Brian. In fact, the the email that I had gotten was this thing. The tirade was also this philosophical thing about, in this country, we're not supposed to have a central religion. What holds us together is this document. And
Yes.
and it's not just Donald, it's anyone who would, if Democrats were smart, when they run against these candidates, they will say, why didn't you stand up for the Constitution? In fact, they should fucking be doing that now.
It is an interesting bit of, I don't want to call it hypocrisy exactly, but it is a little bit of a surprising development to me in the evangelical community, because many white evangelicals, and I mean white evangelical community, many white evangelicals think that this is a Christian country. So it is a little surprising that the document that actually makes it explicitly clear that it is not a Christian country.
Well,
I think that's
my
the
relative is Jewish, though, so I don't know if I don't have any. I don't have any white evangelical relatives.
I was referring to Brian's
the
hand
waving hands. Yeah,
people.
got it.
Church of the waving hands.
And it also
Lights over Jesus. That's
it also reminds me that I really do. I want to have a couple of people. I want to have Bishop William Barber on, and Chrissy Stroop on, who is grew up in a white evangelical family, and her experiences and her insights into that are fascinating. So I think those would be amazing guests to have on to talk about this very issue, because I don't really feel qualified at all. I'm an atheist from New York. So I live in a bubble. And I actually started, I don't even know why. I was just really tired, and I just couldn't get any work done. So I watched a movie, and then another movie was recommended, and it turned out to be the documentary Jesus Camp. And I thought, let me torture myself and watch Jesus Camp. And I couldn't. I lasted like 7 minutes, because it is, one, because it's very difficult to believe that people are so careless about how they indoctrinate children. But two, because it's very depressing to realize that this is huge swaths of this country are wrapped up. Baby. Yeah. And that it's pushed by, in many cases, very cynical, power hungry, money hungry people like the Joel Osteens, who has like a 20-car garage and private jets and doesn't pay taxes because he's a man of God, So
it's that cognitive dissonance. It's the 1984 thing, being able to carry two conflicting ideas in your head and shout them both at the same time and defend them both. Yeah. I'm for God, but screw you. Yeah. I believe in love and understanding, but not for you. That's the cognitive dissonance that we've been fighting for years. And the internet and live streaming and social media has given these people a platform from which to spout their BS. And while people will say, hey, that's a horrible thing, I actually think it's ultimately going to be better for us, because on down the road we'll see it for what it is, and then the majority will react to it accordingly. I hope. I have faith. There you go. There's my faith.
Brian has faith.
I have faith, baby. Jesus.
Sorry, it's like Jesus. Jazz hands. Sorry, don't mean to offend anybody. I just don't. Honestly, there are just some things I don't understand, and I think, Brian, you point to this idea that I think, in my mind, links to seemingly disparate events. There's what happened in the Supreme Court yesterday about I don't even know what this case.
Wait a minute. Can I interrupt with a breaking news thing from
Please
Bloomberg?
do. That's what we're all about on the Mary Trump Show, Nerd Avengers.
Oh my God, what?
The January 6th House panel will recommend criminal prosecution, the chairman says.
Is that shocking? Scott, I'm one of those terrible people.
We knew that. We just didn't know specifically what they were.
Specifically is kind of cool.
It is, it's good to hear. And now let's get 51 senators and get a new attorney general.
Where is the bingo card for all of the potential charges that will come against
It's
Donald. And
too
I don't know, but
big
if
to
Donald
fit
can
in
make
a
money
hat
off
in
of it, Donald
anybody's.
will sell it.
It's too big.
Brian,
like-
you're right.
Yeah, I know.
It's like 8,000 squares. Like there's just not
Oh
enough.
God, that is so fucking cynical. Mary, did you hear what Brian just said?
I did not, because I was trying to say something
He said,
funny
where's
that didn't work.
the bingo card? And I said, I don't know, but if Donald can make money off of it, Donald will sell it.
So sad.
Yeah, and then
It's
hopefully
true.
Eugene will garnish his wages.
That's true.
That's what we're hoping. But anyway, that get to the two issues that seem linked. It's the goings on at the Supreme Court, and again, this case, I don't even understand why it's a case. This woman was just thinking about building a website to provide to make a business that provides wedding websites, but she doesn't want to have to do it for gay people. But in Colorado, you can't discriminate. So you've got Gorsuch referring to this as re-education camps, and you've got Alito making the most vile, racist and misogynistic jokes in his hypotheticals about, well, if you have a black Santa in a mall, it's not like you're gonna see a lot of kids wearing KKK. I mean, what? So basically, comparing gay couples to KKK. I mean, it was absurd and just implying that Elena Kagan knows about these dating websites. It was just such a perfect example of why nobody has any faith in the legitimacy of this court. So you've got that happening.
Well, they have no sense of humor.
God. Well, they think they do. I mean, it is just hysterical to joke about taking away people's fundamental human rights. And then you've got Moore County, in which some domestic terrorist shot up an electrical station. I don't know the technical term, but basically created a blackout so they couldn't hold an adults only drag show because there was no power. And then you have a suspect being visited by the sheriff, and the sheriff, instead of fingerprinting her or interrogating her, whatever sheriffs are supposed to do, and such as, they pray together because it's a conservative Christian town, and how dare those gays come on in and have their own show. I mean,
I think it would have been funnier if the sheriff showed up in drag, but that's just me.
I thought they actually were able to have the show with flashlights, ironically.
But I mean, it's hopefully, but it's a terror. It just shows that the narrative is being driven by the wrong people, and that people in power, whether it's a Supreme Court justice or a sheriff, are making common cause with the people who are out to deny the rest of us our basic human rights. And that seems problematic to me.
Well,
Am I overreacting?
No, you're not overreacting.
I know I'm not overreacting
to make it. But I mean, I often look at, and having been raised Catholic, and I always considered that a cult. I mean, I can tell you about, you don't even want to know. I didn't have pedophile priests. I just had drunks. But that's
probably better.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, except you didn't want to show up for Sunday mass and have to steer the priest up to the pulpit where he would fall down. But nonetheless, I find that to me, the overpopulation or the seeming emphasis on those from the Church of the Waving Hands and Six Flags Over Jesus is basically that those people are cockroaches that need to be, I don't want to say exterminated, but at least you can believe whatever you want. Yeah,
I'm against that.
I'm against all of that.
Even I'm against calling any human being any kind of. Yes, I don't like that.
I feel you, but it feels like to me an infestation.
Yeah,
and the only way to address that is through education.
But I do want to make this other, because since I support atheism, I support organized religion, I support disorganized religion. I think that just like I love when you go to the theater, there's this thing called suspension of disbelief. when you come into this world, all we have waiting for us, supposedly, is the end of consciousness, death, and our bones become dust. That's not
Hooray!
That's upbeat.
in theory. Well, no, but that's the
Welcome.
theory. But I think religion provides an opportunity to divert our attention from the futility of human existence to the possibility of an ever after. And if that's what people want to believe, and if doing that allows for morality, it's not the only way to have morality. If doing that allows for treating each other kindly and not entirely acting in your own self-interest, if doing so creates opportunities to organize communities, I think
Those are
that's
the
all
best things
great.
about religion. Yes.
Well,
Yeah, so I just want to be clear, and I know plenty of people who, in the name of their religion, who don't take things that were written thousands of years ago literally, who have evolved their thinking to the current day and take the most fundamental teaching, which we're taught in the Torah, which is essentially the golden rule: do unto others as you would like them to do unto you.
Well, the
If
Beatitudes, the Sermon on the Mount.
so, you know, uh, and I just want to say I can't stand that fucking commercial with Ronald Reagan Jr., who's always his atheism commercial. It's like
Freedom from Religion Foundation.
freedom from religion. It's like, great, if you don't want to have religion, great, but I don't think it makes an atheist any more superior.
Well,
then
I'm kidding. No, this is
so I just want to I just want to say that's why I get concerned when to use a word like cockroach about people. That's why I'm just pushing.
I feel you, but having been steeped in it, I can find no and I don't find it hyperbolic. I can't find anything that is as metaphorically sound as that. To your point, I find that people that are intelligent and are religious are far easier to talk with than those who are not informed. I have seen and been to too many masses where we teach the golden rule, where you read the Beatitudes, the priest will read the Beatitudes and the Sermon on the Mount, which, by the way, Jesus is coming out party, the best part of the Bible, the Bible book too. The Jewish.
I love that. I love the Sermon on the Mount. It's incredible.
Rocky 1. Catholics are Rocky 2. We've got our own new heroes, and that speech that he makes about that's all that you really need to know and do unto others.
Okay,
I have seen that preached in church, and then people go out to the parking lot and beat each other up trying to get out of the parking lot and start cursing each other.
But that's the problem. I mean, first of all, I don't want any one document that's not the Constitution, and even that is a deeply flawed document.
It's a living document, though.
Yeah, it's a living document unless you're one of the 6 supermajority in the Supreme Court, which is also problematic. But I don't support any of it. I support people's right to make their own choices.
Exactly.
And it's kind of, it's sort of irrelevant. It's completely irrelevant what the Bible says, but also we have to acknowledge that the danger is that many of the people who are infinitely more dangerous than those they characterize as cockroaches, than those for whom they would welcome extermination, whether it's the LGBTQ plus community, Jews, Muslims, anybody who's different from them and believes differently from them. One of the reasons they're so dangerous is because the followers are easily manipulable. There are a lot of cynical people who much like the Republican Party, take advantage of that, and they don't even follow the scripture that they pretend to revere so much, because if they did, then they would be totally cool with making America a socialist country. But again, it doesn't matter, because this country is not a religion. This is not a Christian country. This is not a country.
Not supposed to be.
Well, but the problem, though, is that is exactly what this sorry, I'm waving my pencil sharpening knife around like a psycho. Sorry. Is that the Supreme Court, which is immune from the will of the voter, at least at the moment, seems to be on a collision course with both the First Amendment and democracy itself.
Part of the First Amendment. They're fine with the part of the
Well-
First Amendment that says the right for people to worship, whatever religion they want.
Bullshit.
They're really
Seriously, you think if a Muslim coach was on the 50-yard line?
Christians are fine with the First Amendment when it comes to respecting the establishment of religion, as long as it's their religion.
Right, but Brian, that's not what the Constitution means.
I understand, but
So
that's
they're
their defense.
But they're okay, but it's a poor one.
So they parse it. That's where the problem comes. They parse the First Amendment to make it sound like it is what they want it to be.
Right, of course, that's the problem.
I'm agreeing with you, but
right.
Yeah,
but it doesn't. They're misconstruing on purpose, right? So they are totally against what the Constitution.
Or not on purpose. Maybe they haven't even read the document. I mean, I guarantee.
Well, I'm talking about the Supreme Court justices, and although you know what, I bet most Republican Congress people haven't read the Constitution. I mean, Donald never read the Constitution, so
I don't think Donald could get through the first. I know he did. I know he knows not what the Bill of Rights are, and I guarantee he hasn't read anything past those.
No, which is why, like, I don't know. I don't really understand, Jen, why we can't come up with a way to like a screening system. Like, I've always thought that, but besides hopefully learning the lesson that we can't count on norms and tradition anymore, we need to codify everything. There's like, why can't candidates for office be required to take the same citizenship test that immigrants have to take? Or why don't they have to at least jump through some hoops to demonstrate at least the minimum whatever that word I'm looking for. What is that word I'm looking for?
Fluency.
Fitness.
Okay, well, are you talking about presidential candidates? I'm just going to pretend you are.
Yeah, because I mean, it gets unwieldy if we're talking about,
you can't. You would need to amend the Constitution because there's a real separation of powers issue. If Congress were to pass a law short of amending the Constitution, if they didn't have the votes to amend the Constitution, if Congress were going to try to pass a law to change the requirements for office for the head of the executive branch.
So funny, I forgot about that part.
Okay, just because your reverence for the Constitution was so impressive minutes ago.
No, you know what? I just realized why. Because I wasn't talking about that. I was talking about no, but seriously, I was talking about people running for a party nomination, which has nothing to do with the Constitution. I wasn't talking.
Political parties can do what they want.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Because obviously, the other thing that I don't want candidates, because otherwise Donald still would have been the candidate, and that we don't want people like that getting that.
Let me tell you why. I have an answer for you. They sure as hell could do it, and then Donald would refuse to do it and run as a third party, and they can't win anything. In other words, the parties can do what they want to do.
Right.
They didn't even want him to be the nominee, and they even tried to get him to step down after the Access Hollywood video, and there was no way, and that's why they kissed the ring.
All they had to do,
well, that's one of the reasons.
Was at the very beginning, all they had to do was say, first of all, you 16 idiots, you can all run because you're just going to make everything worse. And all they had to do at the very beginning, before Donald even had an inkling of an idea that he had any hope, was say, you want to be a candidate? Show us your tax returns. And he would have said, you know what? This grift ain't going to work this time. So I'm going to go grift somewhere else. Because it wasn't until like I don't think wasn't until, I don't remember precisely what the moment was.
It was early 2016. It was by February. It was clear to me he was going to get the nomination.
Was it that early? But
I think so.
They had,
but maybe not them.
It's when he went on,
or March.
It was during the debates where he cemented his legitimacy as a candidate.
Well, the first debates, even in November of 2015 or whenever that was, it was shocking how he got all of the energy in the room.
Yep.
But it was early. It was February or March. I guess when were the first primaries. It was clear that he was cleaning up.
Well, February and January in Iowa and New Hampshire. March, it was Super Tuesday where he
Yeah.
started to clean up, and it was apparent that he was going to
Well,
be a lead candidate. But I think,
and they have the all or nothing rules, right? And that's what
yeah.
screwed them too.
And by the time he got out on stage and took them all down and sucked up all the oxygen and became as outlandish as he wanted to be, did we begin paying attention to him and not the way we should have.
And here we are again. Before, because I absolutely believe that, he's not the problem. It's that the Republican Party either continues to stand with him or fail to stand up to him. And that they just don't have the wherewithal, the courage, or the what have you to recognize the mistake they've made, and so they're held hostage to him. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think they disagree with him. I think they're all, he's just given them permission to be their worst selves and indulge in the kinds of misogyny and racism and anti-immigrant hatred that he, started being open about. The problem really is that for decades now, this has been the trajectory of the party, and
Since Reagan,
yeah,
or even Nixon.
Yeah. Since, I think, policy-wise since Reagan, but
Yeah.
structurally since Nixon, and of course
Roger Ailes and Nixon began it.
Yep. So here we find ourselves, and we are trapped in this vicious cycle of, we don't want to pay him. In fact, Dahlia wrote a really good piece about not wanting to spend one more second devoting our precious energy and other resources talking about or thinking about people like Kanye West, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Kevin McCarthy, on and on and on. I mean, it does feel like we lose a little bit of our soul every time we have to talk about them. But then, that conundrum is, well, ignore them. Certainly ignore Donald. I think we could ignore Kanye West. We can't ignore Elon Musk. We certainly can't ignore Donald Trump, because this is the head of the party that just called to have, who's running for president in 2024. And so far is the only Republican who has announced he's running for president in 2024, who just called to destroy the Constitution. And it wasn't on the front page of the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal. So then what happens? That kind of rhetoric goes underground. It gets normalized. So the next time it happens, we're like, well, I mean,
that's a double-edged sword, though, Marianne.
Unlike this is so nice.
we get a tough room. We get criticized for, the press will get criticized for saying something about it by saying, hey, you're paying too much attention to him. And if you ignore it, we get criticized for not paying enough attention to it. The fact of the matter is, it has to be, we're doing it wrong both ways.
Yep.
What we need to do is call attention to it and explain what it is,
right,
and put it in context, which is not what we do. What we do is we're stenographers, and we are really good at covering horse races. So we talk about polls
and rallies.
Right. And instead of explaining exactly what it is that Donald Trump is doing and why he's doing it, because we're not qualified enough to actually break it down and tell people what it is. That's our problem. We're not very good at our jobs. So a lot of people, knowing there's something wrong with the press, would either have us say, quit talking about it, or if you're going to talk about it, damn it, tell us what it really is. And that part is true. We don't do that well. And the fact of the matter is, Donald Trump is a danger. The matter of fact is, he has called for the termination of part. And like I said, I'm pretty sure he'd stand by the Fifth Amendment. And, there are those who are making jokes that are saying, hey, look, if he's getting rid of the Constitution, that means he's getting rid of the Second Amendment. So he's coming after your guns, which is a bad joke. But nonetheless, there are people who don't really understand what it is that Donald Trump does. And we don't do a very good job of informing people about it, which is why I go back to, we need media literacy in this country.
Yeah, and Jen, we're at this inflection point where, on the one hand, we need the media more than ever because information's so siloed. There's so much disinformation out there, and yet, you know, we have broadcast news outlets having Republicans on and not holding their feet to the fire, like not having them answer simple yes or no questions. Like the head of your party just said he wants to throw out the Constitution because he's a sore loser. Do you support him for 2024? They can't seem to do that. And we're hearing it's like CNN is like totally imploding. So do you have any thoughts about that? Have you heard anything about or sorry, not heard anything, but like do you have any thoughts about like why there seems to be in media, not just that I get the corporatist thing, but there really does seem to be this belief that the only way to make money is to go over to the right or the dark side.
There's the, in terms of being one of these paid commentators in particular, I think I think Brian a couple weeks ago was talking about this idea when they're trying to find balance and look for somebody, can they complete a sentence or not? And I mean, cynically, it's
Mick
true that
Mulvaney, seriously?
if Brian and I suddenly, saw the light and became Republicans and said, I'm ready to, go
Wait,
back.
so you're waving your hands the same way now?
Yes.
I'm scared now.
So if I were to say, you know what, it's not fair. I grew up in a Republican family, and though I've always been a registered Democrat, now that the Republicans are such a shit show of fascists, I'm going to start saying I'm a Republican, and I'm going to start standing up for some of these, conservative Republican values. And if I say I'm a registered Republican now and started saying nice things about Liz Cheney, or maybe even nice things about some of them, Mitt Romney, who I have met before. And if I bet I could, get some kind of gig, I'd have to keep moving further to the right. If I said, Sarah Huckabee Sanders isn't so bad. And if I did that, yeah, but like, that's not what, I just can't, it's not credible. Right.
I can't make those words.
But it's not why many of us do what we do. So,
Right.
And at this point, the people who used to be those real genuine conservatives, like, our friend Jennifer Rubin, or, people like Norm Ornstein, our friend, he's not going to say he's a Republican.
Right.
And it's amazing. And there's no space. Like, yes, she's on now, but it's not such a novelty to say I've left the Republican Party. So it's not like there's, those voices. So yeah, I don't know, Mary, but I don't know. I saw a lot of people are being fired from CNN, and I don't know. It seems like across the board, not just people who spoke up.
Well, somebody tweeted,
yeah, and I know several that have, and some of these actually, I agree with some of those higher profile cases.
Let's not talk about that one person with Schadenfreude.
Oh, yeah. like Chris Cillizza. I mean, it rhymes with Chris Cillizza. Should have been fired years ago.
But anyway,
long more than a weatherman, for God's sakes.
So I know it's not the topic, but Brian, why are they running out of money, or what's going on at CNN?
I think they're making a readjustment at CNN, and I think that we have not yet seen where it's going to go, but some of the decisions that they've made actually are sound journalistic decisions. A lot of them, and then
sorry, he's terrible.
No,
we're absolutely
disagree.
We're terrible.
And then some of them are budgetary. You have to remember, we still live in the age of constriction, and the fact is that during Donald Trump's tenure,
let's start calling him Ronald Trump. I like that.
There was a lot more Ronald McDonald Trump.
No, it's the amalgam. It's Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump. Ronald Trump. I like that.
And Ronald McDonald.
And Ronald
clown.
So that clown circus that was the Trump administration took a lot of oxygen and had a larger audience. So they stocked up on people. And now that it's back to not so great ratings, they're letting some of them go. That's part of the problem we have in journalism, is the fact that we are slaves to capitalism and to profit. And If you can't figure out how to make a profit, like, I don't know, like maybe say doing the news, then you will let people go. You've seen, Jen, you and I, Mary, you've been on these. We've all been on these panel shows where you have an anchor who will speak, and then everybody gets 30 seconds or a minute and a half to say something, and at the end of the 10-minute segment, nothing's settled. There's no news given. It's just people arguing, and then we move on. It's entertainment, but it's not journalism. So
And
rather
it's not really entertaining either, quite honestly.
it's a pain in the ass. So instead of, but people,
Oh, come on. I love it. I love a hair and makeup. That's the fun part.
No, they're arguing. They're talking over
never
each
mind,
other,
never
like
mind.
we're doing
Okay, I
now.
got you.
Were fine. I loved it. It taught me some great techniques. So, but now that that's gone, instead of investing in journalism to keep your audience, a simple decision by the boards are to just cut staff.
Yeah. Yeah. Although somebody tweeted that, like 20 people still there from on-air personalities to behind-the-scenes people this is a journalist said have approached him to say that things have never been worse at CNN than they are now. So,
well,
who knows?
I think this whole thing about, I think, there's a bit of so just in terms of the economics, we all know that, news gathering is more expensive. And because of the sort of explosion of the internet, where anyone can, like, I can read a newspaper that I subscribe to and then just summarize it. And so people aren't subscribing as much. Advertisers know where the eyeballs are or are not. And remember when CNN tried to do the live streaming thing? So that whatever it is, I think advertisers, I don't know if advertisers don't love not really knowing who is buying or watching the ads, because Nielsen is a sample versus click-throughs show you reality. And I just think that it's very confusing for the brands to know what to do and where to put their money. And any shift in spending by brands, is going to change what they do. And I don't know if this is what's to come, just more disaggregated news sources.
That's true, but income has not fallen dramatically at networks. The outgo has. So that's what you have to do, is they want to make a certain profit margin. So you're
right. So it's the shareholders making sure they get their dividends. Okay.
That's
exactly
so what all this is.
Yeah. I mean, we got to wrap up soon, but to that point, Brian, then maybe CNN shouldn't have lit $300 million on fire with without even, they crafted this experiment and didn't even see if it was going to work. They pulled the plug before it even started.
What was 300 million for?
Live streaming.
What?
Yeah.
Yes.
You know what? If you gave me 10 million, I could have done a better job.
Listen,
I actually have a budget for that. Yes, you're right.
Casey Hunt, what's his name? Who used to be on Fox?
Wallace. Mike Wallace.
Rex Chapman.
Wallace, sorry.
A couple other people given these bright, shiny new shows for this CNN streaming. CNN invested $300 million in this new venture. And then what's his name? The new guy, Licht, comes in.
Pulls the plug before it ever even got started. And the problem is that actually could have worked they could have
at least recouped some of their money now.
Right.
I mean, I don't know.
I maintain there is a market for this. Gee, I wrote a book, but there is a market for this, that if you did news, there are an overwhelming number of people in the United States, maybe not a majority, but a large enough that you could make a small profit. You wouldn't make the profit that the boards want to, but you would grow an audience over time organically by doing what it is that we all want: real news, vetted, factual news. We're not in the job. I love it when people say, I just want journalists to tell me the truth. Well, if you want truth, as Indiana Jones says, that's 2 doors down in some philosophy class. What we're about is vetted facts by which everyone can decide what their own truth is. And you can't have an argument in politics or in a public area, an arena. Journalism should be that language of vetted facts. And we don't do that. We come at you from the left or come at you from the right, wherever the money is. But there is money to be made right in the middle, doing it the right way, and we don't do it at all.
That's right. And
you think we're more opinion media now, that it's not as much.
That's all it is. It's
Well, it's not all it is, but you can also do opinion media as long as it's based on, like, journalism should be neutral as to the facts, but biased towards democracy. I think it's that's what I think. Anyway, we got to wrap up, but along those lines, everybody, read Brian's book, Freed the Press. It's a really excellent book, actually, and definitely check out Jen Taub's new podcast, like brand.
Can I have
shiny
you say the
new.
name of it so people can find it?
I was
Can I plug mine?
no, I'm just gonna it's like a game. You have to Google it without knowing what it's called to find. Of course, I'm
that's a
going to
good
say the
game.
name of your
I
freaking
like that
podcast.
game. There'll be a prize. There'll
It's
be a
called
Diet Coke if you can find it.
It's oh, that's not like that's a terrible prize. It's called Booked Up, and some of the people on your screen right now may be guests in the future. Who knows?
Sebastian wrote a book.
And mine is Just Ask the Question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Brian. I was pushing your book. I can't push everything.
I'll push
But yes,
I'll push
Brian
it.
also has a podcast which I've been on, which was really fun. I always have a good time when I'm on. Just Ask the Question. See, I know the names of these things. But since we do live in this weird media environment where it's very hard to know where to go, come to the little guys. Come to us. Come to the Mary Trump Show. No complacency, no compromise. Nerd Avengers and Jen's and Brian's podcast and Danielle's and Waj's podcasts and Dahlia's podcasts and I mean everybody. Norm has a podcast. We all have podcasts. But we all write, and whether it's short form stuff or books. So this is a really good place to get lots of information.
Simon's
And
plugging your event now.
Hey, do you see that? It looks like Simon's running the ticker across the screen.
Look at that. Well, by the way, there's news about the our December 19th debut of the Mary Trump Show live, Nerd Avengers, in Los Angeles at Dynasty Typewriter on Monday, December 19th at 7:30 p.m. We have more tickets because they changed the way they do video. Like their video setup used to take up 14 seats. So they changed it. So we just have 14 more seats. So if you haven't done so yet, you have.
Wait, we have 14 more seats and you haven't even announced who our special guest is?
That's right. Because the special guest won't be announced until the show.
Nice.
So it's a surprise.
Ooh. So I shouldn't tell anyone, Mary? I'm going to try really hard.
Don't you dare. We're going to have to end the show right now because I'm worried that Jen is going to reveal.
I'm not.
A very, very deeply held secret. Okay. No, but seriously, there are 14 tickets left. So if you're in the area, it would be awesome to have you join us. It's going to be really fun and hopefully the first of many. So it's a small group, but it was great to be able to hear more from you both today. So thank you. I really appreciate it. Brian Karam.
It's always a pleasure.
Jen Taub, my fellow Nerd Avengers. I will I'll keep everybody posted about our emergency session. Fingers crossed. Let's go, Senator Warnock. All right. See you guys soon.
Bless.
Thank you, Jen and Brian. It's again, never know who's showing up, but it was nice to have a little bit of extra time to spend with them. And thank you, of course, to all of you for being here today. We are, as I just said, going to have an emergency session as soon as the Georgia results come in. We just don't know when it's going to be. Hopefully it's tonight. Well, you know what? I don't really care when it is, as long as Warnock wins. That's all that matters to me. But we will keep you posted. So, as soon as I know, I will send out a tweet for sure. And let's see. Oh my gosh, you know what? We almost forgot. Thursday, December 8th is the 1-year anniversary of the Mary Trump Show. Who knew? So we're going to have something a little special for Thursday, 7:00 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific at youtube.com/Politicon. And of course, we'll be back next week with the nerds at 4. No, sorry. I always mess up this part. 12 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday, 9 a.m. Pacific, just because that seems so ridiculously early in the morning to me. And then the next week is the show. I can't even believe it. Not sure what's happening next Thursday because I might be on a plane. So we'll see what happens there. But there will be a show one way or the other. Just not sure what form it's going to take. So go to youtube.com/Politicon. Please subscribe to the Politicon's YouTube channel. Doesn't cost anything. And like the episode, comment on the episode, click that bell right there. That way you will be sure to be notified anytime a new video drops. And of course, you can listen to the show in podcast form, Apple or anywhere you get your podcasts. And that is it for us today. We'll see you at the emergency session and Thursday night for our 1-year anniversary, which again is totally mind blowing. Couldn't have done it without all of you guys. And in the meantime, please stay safe and be kind.